Most people think reinvention has to be loud: big announcements, big moves, big pressure. But here's the uncomfortable psychology truth. The moment everyone notices you're changing, your brain starts sabotaging you. Because attention creates expectation, and expectation creates fear. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you tried to improve your life quietly, without needing validation? Your brain isn't wired to handle radical change. It's wired to protect you from uncertainty. That's why most people stay stuck, not because they lack motivation, but because they try to change in ways that trigger resistance, burnout, and self-doubt. You don't fail because you're weak. You fail because you're too loud about the wrong things. But there's another way, a silent way, a method built on psychology, not hype. Small moves that don't scare your brain, habits that compound while no one's watching. And when the results finally show up, they feel sudden, almost shocking, even to you. So the real question isn't, can you reinvent your life? It's, can you do it quietly enough for it to actually work? Most people chase transformation the way they chase motivation: loud, dramatic, and all at once. New year, new routine, new identity, new promises. The brain loves this fantasy because it feels productive immediately. But psychology shows something uncomfortable. Radical change spikes emotion, not discipline, and emotion fades fast. That's why so many self-development plans collapse quietly after a few weeks, even when the intention was real. Here's the quiet truth most people miss. Real personal growth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand applause or validation. It happens in places no one is watching. 5 focused minutes, 1 better decision, 1 small act of discipline repeated without drama. The brain rewires itself through repetition, not inspiration. And that's where true mindset shifts are born. Think about it like a tiny gear turning inside a massive machine. On its own, it looks insignificant. But over time, that small, consistent movement drives the entire system forward. Productivity works the same way. 1-page read daily compounds more powerfully than a weekend binge that leaves you exhausted. 1 calm choice beats 10 emotional ones. Progress doesn't need intensity. It needs direction. This is why the most meaningful life lessons often feel boring at first. No fireworks, no instant identity change. Just quiet momentum building under the surface. And once you understand this invisible dynamic, the obsession with big changes starts to crack. Because the real problem isn't how to change, it's why most people try to change everything at once. And that's exactly where things start to fall apart. Here's where most people quietly sabotage themselves, without even realizing it. They try to overhaul their entire life in one move. New routines, extreme schedules, unrealistic time management, and a mindset that says, if I don't do it all, it doesn't count. Psychology has a name for this pattern: cognitive overload. When the brain feels overwhelmed, it doesn't rise to the challenge. It retreats to comfort. This is why big changes feel exciting at first, and unbearable shortly after. The nervous system interprets massive effort as a threat, not growth. Cortisol rises, mental focus drops, and discipline starts leaking through the cracks. What looked like ambition turns into friction, and friction, over time, always wins. Productivity dies not because you're lazy, but because your brain is protecting you from burnout. You see this everywhere. Someone decides to fix their life and suddenly wakes up at 5 a.m., cuts all distractions, reads 3 books at once, starts intense workouts, and plans every minute of the day.
Perfect.
It looks
Wait,
impressive
what
on
is this
paper,
side
but
view?
internally, it's
all
chaos.
tangled and chaotic.
After a few days, maybe a few weeks, motivation crashes. Guilt steps in, and the mind quietly whispers, "See, you never stick to anything." That story becomes identity. And this is the dangerous part. Repeated failure trains learned helplessness. The brain starts associating self-development with pain instead of progress. Confidence erodes. Discipline feels heavier every time. That's why the real enemy isn't lack of willpower. It's the belief that change must be loud to be real. And once that belief cracks, a completely different strategy becomes possible. One that works with the brain instead of against it. Here's where the logic flips, and most people underestimate it. Improving just 1% a day sounds almost insulting in a culture obsessed with overnight success, but the brain responds better to what feels manageable. 1% doesn't trigger fear. It doesn't activate resistance. It slips past the mind's defenses and starts rewiring behavior quietly. That's the hidden power of small wins in mindset and self-development. From a psychological standpoint, consistency beats intensity every time. The brain learns through frequency, not force. When you repeat a small action daily, you're training identity, not just behavior. Reading 2 pages every night, writing 1 paragraph, planning tomorrow in 5 calm minutes. These actions don't exhaust mental focus, they strengthen it. Over time, productivity becomes a rhythm instead of a struggle. Mathematically, the effect is exponential, but emotionally, it feels linear. That's why people quit too early. They don't feel the change yet. But neuroscience shows that habits compound below awareness before they show results above it. After months of quiet repetition, something clicks. Discipline feels lighter. Time management becomes intuitive. Decisions require less effort because the brain recognizes the pattern. And here's the promise most people miss. After a year of 1% improvements, you're not slightly better. You're fundamentally different. Not because you tried harder, but because you trained smarter. This isn't about doing more. It's about doing what works, daily, without negotiating with your emotions. And once this philosophy lands, the only real question left is how to apply it without overthinking, which is where most people get stuck next. Everything changes when the method stops being an idea and starts becoming behavior. The first step is brutally simple. Choose one area of your life, not your whole identity, not your entire routine. One domain: mental focus, health, learning, time management, or emotional control. Psychology is clear here. The brain needs a clear target to build momentum. Vague goals create vague effort. Step 2 is where most people overthink, so don't. Define an action so small it feels almost ridiculous. 1 page of reading, 5 minutes organizing your workspace, writing 3 sentences instead of a full page. If learning is your focus, start with books like Atomic Habits by James Clear or Deep Work by Cal Newport. Not entire chapters, just a few pages. The goal isn't impact, it's inevitability. An action so easy you can't justify skipping it. Step 3 is repetition, not motivation. The habit forms because it happens even on bad days, especially on bad days. That's how discipline becomes automatic. Over time, the brain starts associating the behavior with safety instead of effort. Productivity stops feeling like resistance and starts feeling like alignment. This is where personal growth becomes sustainable instead of exhausting. And here's the part people don't expect. The 1% grows naturally. 5 minutes become 10. 1 page becomes a chapter. Not because you force it, but because capacity expands. The habit evolves without pressure. That's how real mindset upgrades happen, quietly, gradually. And once this rhythm is set, something else becomes obvious. The less attention you draw to your process, the faster it works. Here's the strategic advantage almost no one talks about. Progress accelerates when nobody's watching. The moment you announce big goals, pressure appears. Expectations creep in. Comparison starts poisoning mental focus. The brain shifts from growth to performance, and performance, psychologically, is fragile. Silent progress removes the audience, and with it, the fear of judgment that quietly kills discipline. When change stays private, the nervous system relaxes. There's no need to prove anything. No need to explain why today wasn't perfect. That mental freedom is powerful for self-development. You stop negotiating your habits with other people's opinions. Productivity becomes internal, not performative. You're building skills, not a persona. Think about it this way. Plants don't grow faster because you stare at them. They grow because they're watered consistently. Same with mindset. When you keep your process quiet, you remove comparison loops and social pressure that drain time management and emotional energy. No one is rushing you. No one is validating you. That's exactly why it works. And here's the twist most people don't expect. When the results finally show up, they feel sudden to everyone else. Overnight success, they call it. But you know the truth. It was built quietly, day after day. This silent phase isn't hiding. It's protection. And once you feel that advantage, a deeper question emerges. What's actually happening inside the brain when small habits stay invisible for long periods? There's a lesser-known psychological mechanism quietly driving this method: cognitive friction minimization. Your brain is constantly scanning for actions that demand the least resistance. When effort feels heavy, the mind delays. When effort feels light, behavior flows. That's why the silent 1% method works. It doesn't fight the brain. It lowers friction until action becomes the default. Neuroscience shows that habits stick when the brain predicts success with minimal energy cost. That's dopamine's real job, not pleasure, but prediction. When you complete a small action daily, your brain starts expecting completion. Missed actions feel uncomfortable. Consistency becomes the reward. This is how mental focus stabilizes and discipline stops relying on motivation. Here's a practical example. If your goal is better time management, don't plan your entire week. That's friction. Instead, end every day by writing 3 priorities for tomorrow, no more. Or if you want better mental clarity, try a 2-minute brain unload before bed. Write everything looping in your mind. Sleep improves, focus improves, no drama, just neural relief. And here's the insight most people never hear. When friction is low, identity changes quietly. You stop thinking, I'm trying to improve, and start thinking, this is just who I am now. That's the real shift in personal growth, when behavior no longer feels like effort. And once identity starts updating silently, the final transformation isn't explosive, it's inevitable. And if this part hits close to home, feeling mentally cluttered, busy but not productive, there's a reason. Most people aren't lazy, they're overloaded. That's exactly the problem addressed in the digital hangover system. It's linked in the pinned comment. It's designed to reset mental noise, reorganize your week, and restore clarity without burning you out. At some point, something subtle but powerful happens, and most people can't explain it. The effort feels lighter, decisions feel clearer, and discipline stops feeling like self-control and starts feeling like alignment. That's when the silent work crosses a threshold. Psychology calls this automaticity. You don't need to convince yourself anymore. The behavior runs on its own. This is where mental focus sharpens in a noticeable way. Fewer internal debates, less procrastination, better productivity with less emotional drag. You're not forcing yourself to live better. Your systems are doing the work for you. This is how high performers protect energy, not by pushing harder, but by reducing decision fatigue through simple, repeatable structures. You can see this in real life. People who quietly read 10 minutes a day don't talk about reading. They just think more clearly. People who plan 5 minutes nightly don't brag about time management. They feel less rushed. Their mindset looks calm from the outside, but internally it's precise. That's the compound effect of invisible habits doing visible damage to chaos. And here's the part that matters most. Once this advantage locks in, going back feels uncomfortable. Old distractions lose their grip. Wasted time feels louder. Comfort without progress feels empty. That's not pressure, that's growth. And when that shift happens, the only thing left is awareness. If this much can change quietly, imagine what happens when you stay consistent long enough to surprise even yourself. Stay quiet, stay sharp, stay in progress. Now here's what actually matters. Insight without action changes nothing. Knowing about the silent 1% method won't reinvent your life. Using it will. So don't wait for the perfect week, the perfect mood, or the perfect plan. Start small. Start today. One quiet habit, one invisible decision. Because discipline isn't built in moments of intensity. It's built in moments you don't feel like trying. Ask yourself honestly, where in your life are you still waiting to feel ready? Your mindset, your productivity, your time management, all of it reflects what you repeat daily, not what you promise yourself. You don't need a breakthrough. You need a direction and the patience to walk it. If this way of thinking hit you, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications. This channel exists to help you upgrade your mind, one idea at a time, with real psychology, practical self-development, and life lessons that actually work. And before you go, there's one more layer you shouldn't miss. Understanding silent progress explains how change works. But if you want to understand why an entire generation learned to hide emotions, delay growth, and stay stuck without realizing it, I made a video breaking that down step by step. Click the next video on your screen. Psychology of Gen X: 10 Invisible Emotional Patterns That Quietly Shaped an Entire Generation. Because progress doesn't happen in isolation. It's always connected to what shaped your mind in the first place.